Hello, welcome to MHA Digital Communities. My name's Katie and today I'm going to show you how to make a beautiful painting experiment inspired by the bubbles of the sea. The materials you're going to need are a pencil, something circular to draw around. I have a little template tool, but you can just draw around a cup or a small plate. We're going to be also using some washing up liquid, ordinary washing up liquid. I've put mine into this little glass jar, but you can just have it straight from the washing up liquid bottle. And then I've also got some blue ink. You can use like normal fountain pen ink, or you can use your watercolors or food coloring. Any of those things will work okay. I've also got a pencil and I've also got my wax candle. Okay, so the first part of this is we're going to just draw the circles onto our piece of cartridge paper or thick paper. I'm going to use this little template and I'm just trying to create a series of circles of different sizes, and I quite like to have, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I quite like to have an odd number of circles, and I'm just spreading them out across the surface. Let's have one more there. Okay, so that's the first part. You've just kind of created some bubbles, bubble shapes that you're going to be working into in a moment. So, and here comes the fun part, is to make the bubble mixture. So we start off with just a jam jar, and you're going to put in a little bit of water. I would say probably about 2 centimeters worth. My jam jar already had a little bit of ink in, but I'm going to be putting a bit more ink. Okay, so I'm going to put in, I've got a little dropper here, but you don't have to do it with a dropper, you can just drip it in with a brush. So I've put in there 1 big drop, 2 big drops. You could equally just use your brush and any paint that you have available. It doesn't have to be watercolor. There we go. So we've made some blue ink, and then we add in some washing up liquid. I would say if you've got a teaspoon, probably about half a teaspoon to start with, and I've just put mine into this little jar, so that's probably about half a teaspoon. Okay, and then already you can start to see that there's some bubbles in there. Just kind of give it a bit of a stir. And it is a little bit experimental in that you won't know if you've got the exact mixture, and it works really well until you actually start using a straw. So the straw, the idea of this is that we blow using the straw into the mixture, and we get the mixture of bubbles to rise right to the top until it's overflowing. So if you've got a piece of newspaper or a piece of paper underneath and you don't want it to go on the table, that will just stop that from going all over the table. I've got one of these straws that has a little bend in it. That's quite useful as well. So the really important thing to remember here is not to suck through the straw, because it's not a drink. You need to be blowing, and that's all you need to do. And I'm going to just tilt mine slightly just so I can see what's happening. You might find, you might sort of smell the washing up liquid. So if you just bear in mind, just go slowly, okay? So as you start to blow, you'll see the bubbles rising, and as soon as they rise, obviously they start to burst as well. So it's kind of, time is of the essence. So as soon as you get the bubbles emerging out, then you've got your first, what would I even call this? Blob of bubbles. So you can pull it off, and it does start to disintegrate, and some of it might completely disintegrate by the time you get it down onto the page. just try and tip it off with the straw. That's what I do, and lay it there. As it's settling onto the page, what you'll see is the bubbles will burst, and then there'll be bubble shapes around lying underneath. So you just kind of keep going, keep filling it in. Okay, if you get a little bit of ink and you're able to, while there's still some bubbles on the page, you can actually just drop ink and kind of watch the ink seep down. Not that it makes a better picture, it's just quite fascinating to watch, and then it seeps down and you can see you get these little areas of dark colour. Don't worry too much if it's, you know, going out of the circles. It's just to get an idea of where to put them. So again, before all the bubbles have gone, I'm just adding in a little bit of ink. So from here you can see we've got these darker shapes, sort of outlines of the bubble shapes, and then you've got these paler areas. And all the time this is drying, we can then kind of increase the layers of texture by adding a slightly different colour. So here, if I've got some different coloured ink, I can add that in. So I haven't got another colour here, I'm just going to use the paint. So I'm going to just perhaps get a little bit of some green, or actually some of the green, I mixed some of this a little bit earlier, and then just add that into the mixture. Perhaps try tipping it in. Oops, there we go. See what happens now. So I'm going back over the bits I've already done, and this second layer should just have a slightly different tint of colour, which is obviously greenish. Okay, so on some of these I can see the second layer has actually masked out a little bit of the original layer, but that doesn't particularly matter. As I said, the more you play around with this, the more different textures that you'll find. And each time you do it, it is slightly different depending on just the amount of ink and the type of ink that you've got on there. You could, of course, do a whole page, let it dry, and then go back and do another layer, but just take a little bit longer, so some bits on the edge there. So there's only a certain amount of bubble mixture that will work, and then after a while it tends to become a bit of a foam and it won't make the big bubbles. So you might need to refresh your mixture if you find that you're just getting a foam and you're not getting... Yeah, so this one's kind of tired now. Yep, the bubbles aren't as good. So we'll come to a stop there. So you've got the idea for the general bubbles. And then with something like this, you might want to then go in and add a bit of a background. So I've got my wax candle, and we're using that wax resist technique again. And this time, on the one I did earlier, I kind of tried doing these outlines around the bubbles, but this time I think what I'm going to do is a little bit of actual swirling, really echoing the shapes that the bubbles are making. So I'm going to go for some quite tight kind of swirls down here. Obviously this will take a little while to dry, but while that's drying we can do this part. Okay, so now I've added my wax candle. I'm just going to make a wash using the blue ink. So I'm using something called a Brilliant watercolour ink. It's basically like a really concentrated watercolour. You could also use like fountain pen ink or food colouring, or just the watercolour as well. So now I'm adding a bit of a wash. Now because I've already got these kind of circles and then I've got the bubbles kind of spilling over, I'm just going to leave those there. I'm not going to cover those up. I'm just going to go into the areas outside of them. Okay, so I'm leaving that to dry. I've noticed here where I added 2 layers, it's faded the effect of the bubbles a little bit, but they're still kind of drying. You don't really know what it will look like. I'm really pleased with how the extra layer of ink has worked. So you can keep, once this is dry, you can basically make another mixture, a slightly darker one if you wish, and kind of add some layers onto it, or you can just leave it like that. And that is the bubble painting. I hope you enjoyed that, and feel free to experiment further with how you create your mixture of bubble painting. You can use different colours, you can enhance it with adding another layer, so it allows you to be quite creative as you experiment. And I hope you're going to join me for the next session, where we're going to be doing some painting inspired by shells. Thanks for joining me.